Welcome everybody. This is Startup Grind Barcelona. Prior to the pandemic, we had hosted about, I think it was 74 events. Unfortunately, 1 year ago, you know what happened, unless you have been hiding under a rock for a year, that we are not able to host any events, of course. And we have transitioned to the online world from February 2020. Actually, we have hosted over 30 different events, so that's really a lot of events. Last year, we have been hosting entrepreneurs, investors, disruptors, innovators, celebrities. Even we also hosted, a couple of people in the music industry as well, to see how the pandemic affected their businesses and their lifestyles. But what's important here is that we're back with Startup Grind. Small announcement, we are still not going to be back to physical events, at least in Barcelona. I know that other cities around the world, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later, are opening up, going back into business. But Barcelona, at least we have decided not to go back to physical events, at least until September. But then again, who can plan anything right now of this sort, right? A little blurb about Startup Grind for those not familiar with it, for those that you haven't been attending our events. We have been doing this in Barcelona since February 2014, although Startup Grind started in Palo Alto and California in the year 2010. And we're going to be talking about that. Right now, we're sitting about 700 chapters in 135 different countries all around the globe. Barcelona happens to be one of the most senior chapters, and actually one of the best chapters, because we've got the best community of entrepreneurs in Barcelona. We've got over 7,000 subscribers and a lot of really cool people that come here to speak every now and then. And Pepe is actually the second time that you're here. Hershenson from Pear VC and Pepe, who was at Chartboost until very recently, they're putting together a very special event. We're going to be talking about that because right now, this event is very, very important, because April marks the anniversary of Startup Grind in Barcelona. Actually, it's been 7 years since we are here. We're doing this monthly event, so we should be celebrating with you all. Normally, we gather at Estrella Damm, Antiga Fábrica Estrella Damm in Barcelona. We celebrate. This is not the occasion, but of course, we have a very, very distinct couple of entrepreneurs and investors to talk to us today and share their experience. So welcome Mar, welcome Pepe, and thank you for joining us in this very special event. How are you doing?
Thank you, Àlex. It's great to be here.
Likewise. Thank you so much, and congratulations on those 7 years.
Seven years like flew by. And actually, I don't know about you, but when I'm talking to people right now, so I haven't seen you for a few months. That means a year and a few months, because sometimes I haven't seen them since January 2020. So it seems like we haven't been, the brain has not been adjusting that much to the pandemic. I don't know how you've been dealing with this.
Well, I'm getting used to it. There are many things that I actually like from this distributed and remote life.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about this initiative that you've got going on, because it's not your traditional business. I mean, Pepe, I don't know if very recently I found out that you quit Chartboost. Mar, you have been a VC at Pear for some years, but it seems like you joined forces for this event through the California-Spain Chamber of Commerce, and we thought it would be a great idea because you've got an open call for entrepreneurs to submit their decks and do sort of a application to pitch US-based VCs in the coming months. And we thought this is very interesting. This is very relevant to our community. Every now and then we host VCs. We do an open call. We have our community submit their decks. Also, I'm also an investor, so that's something that's great, that we can introduce them to other investors, because warm introductions and whatnot work very well for VCs. How about you tell us very briefly, what's the event about, the very basics, what we should know, and then we'll go into the specifics of how to raise funds from US VCs.
Sounds good. Mar, if I may,
Go ahead, Pepe. Go ahead.
All right. So first of all, the name sounds very glamorous, and the California-Spain Chamber of Commerce sounds also very glamorous. It's not. It's just a bunch of Spaniards who are based here, mostly in Silicon Valley, and we just want to help out. So we got together. Mar and myself are honored to be part of the board. And in fact, we took over the chamber back in September, and we started thinking, what can we do to really help the community? And And the summit idea came to fruition. Essentially, we got together, we brainstormed, we said, okay, on one hand, and Mark can tell you a little bit more about that, but on one hand, VCs here in Silicon Valley are changing their scope. Silicon Valley is not as local as it used to be, and investors need deal flow from all over the world as long as the quality is there. And on the flip side, we're seeing that the Spanish ecosystem is becoming a lot more vibrant. We're starting to see companies getting international VCs and so on. So the chamber is really in a good spot to help just connect these two worlds, right? And that's the idea of the summit. We want to make it recurrent, so we don't want this to be a one-off, but we're very focused on this edition that will happen in June. It's going to be a virtual event, and it's just a demo day with the best startups from Spain. So what's happening right now? We're open for applications until May 16. We're looking for the best startups that are ready to do a seed round or a Series A in Silicon Valley. So if you're there, you're listening, and you have a very cool idea and a business that it's ready to scale and come to the US, feel free to apply. And then after May 16, we're going to start the selection. We have a committee of people that will help us select and find the 6 to 8 startups that will present in June. But we're very focused on the event, but there's a lot more to that. We're preparing workshops, we're preparing mentoring, because we want this experience to be transformational for everyone, not only for the selected companies that will present on June 10th, but also for everyone who applies and is ready. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know, Alex, if you have any questions, or Mar, if you want to add any context to that.
No, just adding that, I think this is not just come and present to VCs. I think we're putting a lot of effort on making sure that the people that are coming from Spain, they get all the training and all the onboarding necessary to be really successful. So I think our commitment is to really work with those companies to add value. So what they go and meet the US investors, they cause a good impression.
Exactly.
How about what kind of VCs can we expect? What sort of VCs will be involved in this? I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to name drop any of them, but what kind of category, at least, of VCs are going to be present at this event?
Well, we already have confirmed 2 of judges from 2 top tier 1 firms in the Silicon Valley. One is General Catalyst, Nico Bonazzos, and the other one is Bay 10. The Yemi Ayao, who's actually originally from Spain, is an incredibly successful investor. And we'll be bringing in a couple more judges. So all the investors that we're bringing in are, the top of the top here in the Valley, either as a judging or as audience.
One question when I saw your event, because obviously it's organized by the California Spain Chamber of Commerce, but would it be open to companies that are not incorporated in Spain? That's something that I like. What's your take on that? And can companies, I don't know, from Italy who temporarily reside in Barcelona can apply for the event, or not really?
So this is a great question. We do have a little bit of a definition of what a Spanish startup means. We don't want to be super exclusive. So we don't, in fact, we just want for the startup to have significant operations in Spain, right? I mean, some founders that we've seen already apply, they already have their headquarters in Delaware, right? Because they're already thinking about coming to the US and so on. So that's fine, but their founders are in Spain and they've kept their let's say, engineering teams in Spain. That's very valid, right? Well, we know that because Spain is so attractive to also international talent, we have founders who are not from Spain that have started their companies in Spain. That's all obviously a Spanish startup too, right? So there is a definition. What we want is that a significant part of their teams and their founders are in Spain. I think that's a way of kind of defining what a Spanish startup means. Our goal is to help the ecosystem, but we can be a little bit loose on the edges, let's say.
Also, it's the first edition, right? And it seems like to me that you're applying very lean startup methodology, defining as you go. It's 2 months away.
I wanted to start saying that. Again, maybe the Chamber of Commerce thing sounds very glamorous. We operate like a startup, right? And we all have different jobs. We're all volunteering here, and we had to do fundraising the same way that startups do, just to put it together, right? So we're very thankful.
Tell me a little bit about that. What do you need that for? What do you need? Because it's an online event, right? So it's not like you're incurring in venues and all of that. But I don't know, the streaming or what was it for?
So I mean, there is a little bit of production cost. You're right. It's way leaner than probably a physical event, and hopefully one day this becomes so big that it becomes an actual summit where people can handshakes, if that ever exists again.
Yeah.
but there is some cost, and we have very high quality mentoring, and some of it is paid also. So anyways, there is some production cost, and while it will be on Zoom, but there is some production cost associated to that, and even marketing and communications.
And also putting all these workshops together. I think we're investing all the capital we're raising to make these companies best. Our goal, our number one KPI or measure of success is getting these companies funded.
Let's get down to business, and I'm going to ask some questions more like outside of the event, right? More about the dynamics of, generally speaking, raising funds in the US, right? So in 2017, actually, we organized our first independent startup brand Barcelona conference. Funnily enough, the name of it was Barcelona San Francisco Summit. I don't know if you were aware of that, because probably a partner of yours or a friend of yours, Miguel Valls, had commissioned that to us to organize a conference to connect, because he was also part of the, I don't know if he's part of the chamber, but he's part of the Barcelona San Francisco committee and all of that. And we flew a bunch of people from San Francisco and Silicon Valley to speak in Barcelona, and we created a precedent there, right? Like the first edition of this kind of conference, and we thought, and also was the year where we had the direct flight between Barcelona and San Francisco / Oakland. So it was really good news. My first question here is having a direct flight. Have you seen a direct correlation between the fundraising between Barcelona and the Bay Area thanks to the direct flight, or increase in business in general?
Mark can maybe talk a little bit more from a VC, from a venture perspective. I don't know about that. What I can tell from a business perspective, it is very relevant. In fact, in 2013, we opened at Chartboost, we opened our first international office, and we chose Amsterdam over any other city in Europe as a base camp. And partly, I mean, there were other reasons, but partly was because of the ease to get there, right? Like the fact that we have direct flights, and once you're in Amsterdam, it's the fourth airport in Europe, so you can fly pretty much anywhere. And in 2018, when I opened the first engineering office outside San Francisco for Chartboost, things had completely changed, and Barcelona was way more connected to San Francisco, and that's why we decided Barcelona over any other city in Europe to open our first engineering office, right? So what I can tell you is, from the perspective of the business of an entrepreneur, of a leader at a company, it does make a difference. It just brings the cities closer, right? And I think Barcelona and San Francisco have a lot in common culturally, and even physically. When you're in San Francisco, you come from Barcelona, it's an easy move, right?
It is.
The fact that they're by the water, they're very neighborhood centric. I think it's very similar in many ways, and I think the direct flight just brings these two very culturally similar cities just a little bit closer. That would be my perspective.
And I want to say that, to my dismay, the direct flights actually have been stopped because of the pandemic. So we need Miguel Valls again.
Oh,
yes.
But they have been stopped temporarily, I understand.
I hope so. I hope.
We don't know. I mean, Norwegian was one of the ones serving, and we know that they canceled all their long-haul flights. And the other one is Level, and we'll see. We'll see about that one.
Yeah, I just booked a ticket to Barcelona, and there's no flight from the US direct from no city.
Oh, that's terrible. That's appalling. That's so from from a business perspective, also from a VC, that makes a lot of sense. How about these kind of events, right? Because one of the things that traditional Silicon Valley investors, they've been like very centered about being in Silicon Valley, and they were holding the advantage position in which you want my money, come over here. I'm not going to take a look at anywhere else, right? However, with the recent years where entrepreneurship and innovation, disruption, what have you, has been decentralized and decoupled from Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, to be more precise. Right now, I feel like they've got more competition. Like the narrative is that they have more competition all around the world. I don't know if that's true, because people still dream about raising from Silicon Valley and not money from whatever, Finland, just to name a country at random, right? So what's your perspective of this? Do these kind of events actually force Silicon Valley VCs to take a look at everywhere else in the world, or not really? I mean, what's your take? I mean, because
I can maybe take that, because it's I think the world, I moved to the Silicon Valley in 1995, and it's very different from today, right? I think in 1995 it was I think the rule was, if you get in your car and you drive for an hour, that is as much as I'm willing to travel for a board meeting, right? And today is not the case, right? Like, I think you take the leading firms in the Valley, like Sequoia or Lightspeed, and they have offices in China, India, Europe, LATAM. I think venture is much more global. And I think from us, the investors, we're always after, what is the biggest opportunity? How can we find that next big company? And we are completely aware that it doesn't necessarily need to be in San Francisco. It has a higher chance if you're in San Francisco, but there are big companies that exist in Europe, and our leading, probably the best venture firm in the business, Sequoia, just opened an office in Europe, which I think is going to be transformative for the region. It means a lot more money is going to go in. So that's from our perspective. We know that there's opportunities outside of the Silicon Valley, right? I think for a founder, you cannot be a big company if you're local, right? I think any very successful company eventually is global. And I think they have to have the flexibility of wanting to move and expand, whether it is San Francisco, New York, or whatever, Shanghai, it doesn't matter. But I think that's what the internet has allowed us in many ways, right? The businesses can expand much more rapidly than they did before.
Mar, from your perspective of being a VC, maybe you can just in 30 seconds tell us what you do at Pear. And the second thing is, how has the pandemic transformed the relationships in the fundraising process? That meaning, the initial calls, right? So less presential calls.
I need more than 30 seconds.
Are people more transactional?
Questions.
Oh no, the 30 seconds is for the elevator pitch. The rest you can expand as much as you want.
Okay, so Pear, we are a seed stage fund. We invest in sector agnostic, so we invest in all sorts of companies, typically the first check. We are after building 10 billion plus companies. So we are very aggressive. We take huge risks, and we're committed on doing that. We've had 2 IPOs. We're going to have another one this year. So small but mighty. That's what I would say in English. So that's about Pear. About,
wow.
How has the world changed? When the pandemic happened, I think for literally like 35 days, people didn't know, and they were very afraid, and the world was going to end. And after that, the opposite happened. I don't think we've ever seen as much venture activity as maybe in 1999 as we see today. Deals are getting done in a week. Valuations are twice what they used to be a year ago. And I think Zoom has made it that, you can see 20 investors in 1 week. There's a bunch of FOMO because you actually don't know if you're sitting in, like me, in my basement, who's around me and what deal is happening and not happening, right? Yeah. So surprisingly enough, and at the macro is with us. I think the pandemic has been pretty, has created more inequality. If you're in tech, you have all the power. All the tech companies have done phenomenal. If you're a small business or a restaurant, you have not, right? So I think, the big money is going into tech. So we have a lot more cash to invest in companies. So there's many reasons, but yeah, it's a good time to be a founder, I would say.
From the perspective of a founder, like who wants to expand or raise funds in the US, right? Traditionally or abroad, one of the best exercises is to find somebody from your origin country and develop a friendship with them, because they can introduce you. They can tell you, the temperature of the ecosystem, who the relevant people are, do's and don'ts, cultural shortcuts and whatnot. And this is a thing that has happened a lot. Actually, my first contact in San Francisco was Miguel Valls, but I didn't know him. I just met him by sheer chance, basically, right? But I went without any contact to San Francisco. But that's sort of a mistake. Everyone else, they look for, like, they try to contact somebody in the ecosystem, famous Spanish people or Catalan people in the Bay Area, right? Right now, we don't need to do that because there's a pandemic going on. So there's this physical connection doesn't happen. But how important is still nowadays this kind of relationships, and would you still advise it for people who want to fundraise in the US?
I would
That's
say,
a question for both of you, because you both are experts, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me share my 2 insights, my 2 cents. I think it's extremely important still. And you focus on having a friend from your own company. That helps with the cultural kind of translation. But I would say that you just need good contacts. It doesn't need to be from your own country. In fact, when I think back about my own experience when I first got here, and I didn't have any contacts at all. I came here as an adventure, attracted just by Silicon Valley. I didn't have a job. I didn't have and in fact, there was an effort from my side to just not mingle with Spaniards. What I wanted is kind of move away from the Spanish mentality and really get absorbed into how people do business in Silicon Valley. So I would go to events. I would be very creative with my ways of networking. I mean, the accent helps, but I would always try to ask a question at an event. And you can still do that if it's a virtual event, right? But try to push the limits, get out of the comfort zone, ask a question. I would always ask a question at events. I would go to talks. I mean, it's very common in the physical world to have a fireside chat. You have someone speaking, a subject matter expert, and then there's pizza and beers, right? So that's the format. I would always ask a question. And we're lucky enough to come from Barcelona. Barcelona is a great brand. So I would always introduce myself as, I'm Pepe from Barcelona, and this is my question. Boom. And that was an icebreaker because people in the networking phase would come to me, oh, you're from Barcelona. That's super cool. So you need context, right? So be creative. Another thing that I used to do a lot, I bought a scooter when I got here, and scooters were not very popular.
San Francisco.
In San Francisco. And
wow, why would you do that? Suicidal.
Well, it's the greatest thing ever, just to move around. And so it was the equivalent to a Scoopy in Barcelona, right? So I would carry my helmet to all my networking events just as an icebreaker, because people would see a helmet and they would always come to me to ask me, oh, and what kind of motorcycle do you have? And in fact, it was just a crappy scooter. But anyways. What I'm saying with that is that I encourage anyone who wants to move away from their countries and come to Silicon Valley or go anywhere, just to try to embed into that culture. And you need to be creative in the way you generate these relationships, because this is the number one step. Is just know someone who can introduce you to 10 other people, who will introduce you to 100 other people. And at the end, you build a network and I think networking is the source of everything good, everything good, right? So Mark can talk from a VC perspective also, as well as a founder. But I think personal referrals are the strongest connections ever. Yes. That would be my 2 cents.
Well, I don't have much to add because I think Pepe has said it. I think networking is a necessity in the business that we're in, right? You cannot be successful without it. I would say that, the Valley is a really, really small place, and we all know each other in 50 different connections to the same person, right? So, it's not just networking casually. I think it has to be true networking. One of the greatest thing of the Silicon Valley is that people help each other without expecting anything in return. We truly don't expect anything in return. And I think that makes us really special, right? It's you meet somebody and can you connect me with this or can you introduce me? Most people will do it. And hey, if I'll never see this person again, that's great. If I do, they'll remember. It's just there's a lot of goodwill. And I think the network is high quality. Those connections are not just weak connections or casual connections that exist in other networks.
Yeah, however, introductions and this sort of first-time meetings that happen with everybody, because it's true, everybody wants to help you in Silicon Valley. But it's also true, equally true, and not a lot of people speak about that, is that you get only one shot. Like at best, you will be getting 30 minutes of somebody. Sometimes it's even like 15 minutes. A coffee, very, very quick one, but you need to nail really what your objective of the meeting is, right? You've got these 15 minutes. After that, you will be disappearing off their mindset forever, right? Maybe I'm exaggerating here, but it's true that everybody will give you an opportunity, but they have other 10,000 people that they will be trying to help. So it's not like if you don't impress them in the first meeting, you might not get a second chance. So how can we avoid being the typical Spanish mentality of not being direct and upfront and precise about what we want and just, going a little bit around the main topic and be very, very specific about what's the goal of the conversation, what you want to get out of that meeting?
Maybe let me give me some caveats on this. I think, Àlex, you're right. You have to be presentable and explain.
I never had a second chance, so that's why.
But Mark Suster at this other firm up front, he published a blog a while back. It's called, I invest in lines, not dots. And this is true. I think if you meet somebody, you put a dot somewhere. Okay, this is what I think about this person. But if you meet them again and they are doing better, your line is a positive slope. It's growing.
It's a good one.
That's actually very positive. And in my business, you never know. You just never know who's going to build the next great company. And what we are looking for is, hey, how is this person evolving over time, right? There are fundamental things that I think don't work. Like if you are arrogant or rude or, that sort of thing is really hard. But somebody that is just getting started, typically most founders, they may not know what the business is like. They haven't done it before. I don't expect that they know everything, but I'm measuring how fast they're learning, right? I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, two really good points here. One of them I never realized about that, so I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But the thing that I wanted to point out here is that we tend to not ask things up front, and we go into the meeting trying to impress the other person, but the other person, at least in Silicon Valley, mentality is like, how can I help you? Like, please, what is the ask? Do you want an introduction to the CEO of Dropbox? I can do that. Do you want this? Do you want me to introduce you to first round or whatever? But please ask it. And we are too shy. We have the imposter syndrome, especially when we're starting out. We're surrounded with doubt and whatever. We don't go to the point. And these super ultra busy people from the Valley, they want to go straight to the point, right? So it's really good. But the second thing you mentioned, and I never reflected on that, is that the line progression, it's very important because, for instance, I've been going to Silicon Valley, at least until last year, I had been going to Silicon Valley for 7 years straight, right? So in every year, my company size had grown from some. The first year, I didn't have any employee, I didn't even have a company. And then every year, it was like almost twice the size, right? I was like, wow, so that gave me some credit to meet people once again. So maybe they were kind of like impressed, like, oh, wow, this guy's coming over every year and the company's progressing still alive 7 years. Like, wow, he must be good at what he does, right? So I think that's also the mentality. So it's kind of like a combination. Show your pride a little bit, and then ask for what you really need, because people I think they're much more transactional than in Europe. I don't know if that's too much my opinion.
I think you're probably right about being transactional. In fact, I tell people, if you send me an email, please put it in bullet points so I can read it quickly.
What's your wishing list?
It's true. It's much more fun to go to a meeting with Pepe and the people in the chamber. I can't wait to do it in person, right? But you're also more effective if you have an agenda and you are on the ball, right? Yeah. And I think we don't really have a lot of time. I actually love the chamber because we have both. We are the Spanish character and the efficacy. I will say one thing, Àlex, also, like, the purpose of the summit was actually to bring this network to these companies, right? And
Perfect.
to really give them that connection that allows them to connect with, to get introduced to the right people. And, I think one of the mistakes founders do, the same way that there are great people in the network, sometimes there are charlatans, right? They don't know what they're saying, but especially to people that are coming from other countries, just because they've been here doesn't mean they're really great. And they may give the wrong advice, right? And I think what the chamber does, Pepe, who is actually our president or leader, he actually recruited the best people. So I think the advice the companies are going to get is going to be, really top notch. That's really important. We are that network. That's what the summit is.
Exactly. Thanks, Mar. And one thing I was reflecting when I was looking at you both talk, I think that I agree with this point. I think ultimately it's not that you don't get a second chance, it's that there's a true value of time. And that's what I like the most about it. And I think that's reflected in what Mar just said about the emails. I think there's something that I've seen in communication styles that it's very telling, is that in Europe, when you send an email, you would start arguing and putting all the arguments, and at the end, the conclusion. Therefore, that's why I need this, right? But the whole plan is at the beginning. Silicon Valley is the opposite. You put the thing that you need, right? Or what is the conclusion in the first sentence. And if you need to elaborate, you need to add stuff that justify that conclusion, you add it, but afterwards, right? I need to read in a glance, and most people are carrying their phones, right, every day, right? You need at a glance to know what's needed from me. And I think ultimately that comes from the true value of time, right? I don't take meetings without an agenda. And that's another thing, right? The calendar invite needs to have, okay, what are the bullet points that we're talking? I try to impose, and I think many people try to impose that meetings that are longer than 30 minutes, right? Decision-making meetings, right? And if you need more time, that means that you need to break out, probably think about, read materials, and then get back together, right? But this idea of meetings of 2 hours and so on. And I think Zoom has only helped with that. Even board meetings, I think, are way shorter than they used to be.
I mean, there's this theory that says that if you schedule a meeting for an hour, people tend to use the hour, even though that you maybe just talk for 17 minutes, and it's like, we've got an hour, so we might as well want to use it, right? It's kind of like a sunken cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I like the other differences that we might expect from dealing with U.S. investors. Probably this one's more from the founder's perspective. So maybe Pepe, you can chime in on that. As in, I don't know if you fundraise over here or in Europe, or maybe not as much as in the U.S., right? But like cultural differences, and are they so are like the cultural thing, these distances big as they were back in the day, or right now with the globalization that Zoom is bringing to the table, they are, more or less the same, raising the country than another one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my caveat is that I haven't really raised. I've been exposed to some investors in Spain, but I haven't really, at least myself, I haven't raised in Spain.
Yeah.
So I don't have a one-to-one comparison.
Right.
I want to say that the venture capital industry in Spain has evolved quite a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of them come here. And the world is flatter, right? So I think people are more connected, but I think in general, I don't know how they do it, and Mark can share that, but there's a lot. I mean, at the end, venture capitalists are in the business of risk. They're trying to mitigate the risk, right? So this concept of seeing the progression of an entrepreneur, sensing the value, the true value, the eagerness, the ambition of a team, right? Is a quality that they've developed here in Silicon Valley for a long time. And references are so important. It's a tight network because they've been doing this for so long. And these connections are truly important because at the end, if Mar introduced me to anyone, or I introduce anyone to Mar, there's trust already built in, right? And I think that's critical to to mitigate risks, right? So I think what I've seen in the US is a very strong capacity to almost smell the quality of teams and take risks, and to just help out, right? And again, this generosity that Mar was alluding to is also present in the VC. So I don't know how they do it. Mark can tell us more.
Yeah,
what are the
please.
techniques
I want to hear that.
To smell the quality of teams, but
I want to hear that.
Be really excited to vouch for them, right? Because that's it's a financial business, but it's also a talent business very strongly, right? So.
Yes. Well, maybe I can answer the first question. Then let me tell you about how we smell teams. But I was in a panel yesterday with some investor from the East Coast, and you don't have to go to Spain. The difference within the U.S., I think, a state away, the mentality of a Silicon Valley investor is just not the same as an East Coast or Europe or anywhere. Maybe China is more like U.S. We want to take risk. We're in the business of risk, and basically, if you're running a venture firm and you don't take risk, you'll never invest in a super winner. It doesn't work because things that are obvious only return a little bit of your capital, right? So you have to take risk. Now, the people here, the way we look at risk is we ask, how big can this get? How big can this get, right? And that's the thing that is top of mind for me. Whereas if you are a more conservative investor, the question is like, do you have enough money to last you for the next 2 years? Or when are you going to have revenue? And those are not the same ways of running a company, right? And you have to, as a founder, you really have to know which boat I'm in. Am I I'm building that $10 billion company, or I want to have an exit of 100 million or 20 million, and that's perfectly fine with me. There's no right answer. This just goes with the founder, whatever the founder wants to commit, right? For us, we're in the 10 billion bucket as a fund, right? So what we look is for those founders. I want people to come to our office and really explain very clearly why there is a reason that this company should exist, right? So I'm not just looking for somebody that is ambitious or a great programmer or whatever the list of qualities. They absolutely need to know, almost be market connoisseurs, right? They need to know why there's an opportunity to build a big company, and they need to explain it. So it's very subtle. It's very subtle. The same idea delivered by two different founders will get funded in one case and not in the other. It's subtle.
And sometimes, one of the hardest things I find as an investor is that you get to see hundreds of pitches or pitch decks, right? Maybe in your case, it's thousands already, right? But and all of them could be nice, but some of them are downright horrible, right? So what's the red flags that for a US investor you should not be indulging in? What are the things that you're raising from the US? Don't even mention this, don't do this, don't do that, especially in the pitch deck.
There's many, I guess, red flags. I've talked to a lot of companies from Europe. To be honest, I'll be very frank with you. There's two things that are generally broken. One is the cap table. So, unfortunately, the European seed investors have terms that are very aggressive. So you can get a company that comes here to raise a Series A, and the investors already own more than 50% of the company. That's horrible for the founder. And I want the founder to own as much as possible so they can be successful, right, at the end of the day. So for me, that's been a big reason. The second has been, I'm from Spain, from Barcelona. I love Spain. You live great in Spain. But if you want to build a big company, you have to get out of here and, have dreams that are bigger, right? And I think that's hard. It's hard because you live really well. It's a great life. I wish I could go, I haven't been there for a while. I wish I could go. It's not necessarily the deck. I think the founders are really well prepared, but it's really, just the wanting to get there and some fundamentally messed up financings from early on.
So speaking of the cap table, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Alex. I just want to kind of point out, because the words that Mar just said make a very big difference in, just for everyone to really hear what she just said. They want the founders to own as much of a stake as possible. And I think that is, again, the generosity and the fact that investors know that if they cut the wings of the founders, I mean, they're killing the company, right? So I think that respect for the value of the founder is also a big thing. So I mean, that's really what I've learned from investors here, and I just want to make sure that it may be subtle, but it's a big difference. It's
Oh no, it is, and that was going to be my next question, because actually maybe because I started investing, I've got some investments in the US as well, and I feel like, I subscribe 100% what you say, Mar. So it's about the entrepreneur owning as much as they can from the company, because you're thinking long term, and the more they can, the later they can dilute themselves. If you dilute yourself too early, you've got a problem. So it's not like, but there are two things here. One of them is the percentage of ownership, which of course you gotta have as much as you can. The other thing that normally there's two schools of thought about is like having too many people on the cap table, even if it's in a small percentage. In Europe it's pretty common to have seed angel investors that are like, I'll chip in €1,000 here. And some people don't want to have a lot of people on the cap table, even if this is a really, really relatively small percentage of the company. Whereas others are like, I don't care, I will wipe them out in the Series A or something like that. Where are you standing on here? Because there's these two schools of thought, and I'm sitting on the fence. Like, I don't know what to do here usually.
Well, I mean, I think there is some legal issues as well. So let me address those first, and then I'll go to the practical sense.
Great.
But if you have more than 500 investors here in the US, you're forced to go public and so on. So there are some companies that did, want some of these crowd financings, and I've had to clean them up, and it's a complete mess. So don't do that. Now, the more typical case is that I have this party round with 30 angel investors. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a mess if you're a founder, because, I think the same way that I want to be really respectful and to the founder has to be respectful back to the investor. So even if you give me $1,000, it might be really important for you, right? Yeah. Then, you probably want to pick up my phone, or I want to send you an update every month, and you want to respond. So you're creating a lot of overhead for you, right? So you have to decide, is this $1,000 check worth it? And sometimes it is, because angels can be really, really strategic, right? They can actually add a lot of value that, when you are building your investors, when you're raising money, I think of it as you're building your investor team, right? The same way you're building your engineering team, your product team, you have your investor team. And what do I need in my investor team that's going to make me successful? That's the way you should be thinking about it, right? It's not, if you have a lot of angel investors that are not doing value, or that they're a pain, hopefully not, then it's more work for you. And if you're a founder, the least thing you have is time. Your clock is ticking every day. As soon as you wake up, it's ticking. So you don't have time to waste.
There's definitely a trade-off between like having too many people, but also like sometimes you want to squeeze in 2, 3, 4 extra people that maybe are not able to chip in a lot of money, but they can bring like, the contacts or whatever, some more like smart money, so to call it, right? But
the thing is,
don't have more than 500. We take it. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the founder needs to be choosy if they can, right?
Yeah.
You would spend a lot of time hiring your first engineer, right? Are they the right person? Am I going to do references? Same with your investors.
Co-founders.
You can't get rid of them.
Yeah. How about the timing? Let's talk about the timing, because always, when you're fundraising, it's a common thing to say, like, if you want to raise from this investor, start a relationship with them 6 months earlier, 12 months earlier, right? But now with the rise of these bigger funds also in Europe, there's more competition for the US. So all of a sudden, all the US funds that typically were not looking to Europe for seed or pre-seed now are. And they're investing also in like smaller seed funds because they want to have some scout or sourcing funds, whatever the terminology for them is. So basically, even if we want to raise from a fund that gives or funds companies from Series A onwards, you should start contacting them already in pre-seed mostly, right? How do you calibrate this? Because it's trade-off here is a lot of overhead again, like you don't want to have relationship with too many people, but like when's the right time? Because nobody seems to give me like a proper answer for that. What's your take?
Mar, go ahead. Go ahead.
Again, it's a very long question, I know.
No, it's okay. I actually have a whole presentation on this, so I'll send it to you.
All right.
But it's about, there's a rational company, right? So if you are a rational company, if you have nothing, let's assume you just have an idea, there's no product, there's no customers, then you would raise pre-seed, right? And typically pre-seed is, friends and family and fools, right? The triple F, or, pre-seed funds. That's one bucket, right? Now let's assume you have a product and you at least have one person or one customer or, that uses your product and they love your product. They can't live without your product. So you may not have growth, but you really know you've built something someone cares. I would call that seed. And then you can raise money from a seed fund in the Silicon Valley, I would say. And now let's assume you raise your seed money and you work on your growth engine or your sales machine, and you're able to go to the next investor and say, hey, I know how am I going to get my next 10 customers, my next 100 customers. I know how the sales process works, and I just need some gas in the engine so I can grow. That's a Series A, right? So that would be a rational company. Now, the reason you probably don't get a straight answer is because there is a lot of irrationality in the process, okay? Let's assume that you are, 2 engineers, you've been 5 years at Twilio, and a product manager from Optimizely. I'm making this up. And you're the founding team and you have nothing, right? Well, your team is so good that people are going to be like, well, we're just going to give you seed money, forget pre-seed, or I'm also just going to give you A money because your team is so good that I know you're going to blow through stages 1 and 2 really, really quickly, right? Now, there's a lot of risk on doing that, right? But this happens all the time here. And I call these elite startups. And I think what makes an elite startup, there's no book. In fact, the elite startup is my lingo, but it happens, and every venture firm has a slightly different bar. And that's why people are confused. But in a rational world is what I said at the beginning.
But actually, it seems like we came to the same conclusion, because I was going to say, like, it all boils down to whether it's your first company or your second company. Normally, it is like that, or depending on your background,
not even,
right?
You don't have to be a second founder. You can be just somebody from a great startup, or even not so great.
No, the track record. I think at the end, track record. It doesn't. But I mean, in all cases, I think the story of progression and showing that progression is important. So when you were asking the question, I thought you were asking about when to start building the relationship with the investors. And I think you can start early. My experience is, in fact, our investors came from prior relationships, but going back to the metaphor of the line, I think you need to know at what point of the dot, at what point of the line you're in, and maybe that rationality that Mar was describing is really what shows you, okay, can I pitch for a seed, can I pitch for a pre-seed, or am I on Series A? But I think again, these deep connections, in my case, have been critical in all our fundraising. And in fact, we've built them even before we were ready to raise. I mean, our first 2 investors came from connections that we had built before and in previous companies, right? So I think it's that progression that they've seen in ourselves that compel them to really invest.
Yeah,
in
I think
Chartboost at least.
Okay, good point. And actually, I wanted to weigh in on the thing that you mentioned that doesn't really boil down to whether it's your first company or not in terms of skipping the pre-seed or seed, but you might commit rookie mistakes. Even if you're an experienced person in the corporate sector, it's your first company, and then maybe your first term sheet, you accept something that is unreasonable. And now we're gonna go into the last 10 minutes of the event, so it's gonna be like quicker questions and even quicker answers. So, but what's the number one rookie mistake you need to avoid if you are to fundraise from the US?
My best, I have it as a counter rookie. So my best thing has been have a very good legal counsel, and is someone who's also a personal friend, and who, because we did mistakes and we had to revert contracts that were not properly put together in the first place. But just having this, your right hand, your legal counsel, I don't do anything without her reviewing any contract. That's just to prevent exactly what you just said.
Mar, from your perspective, because you mentioned that angels are too aggressive, and probably there's something there regarding liquidation preferences or something like that. So I don't know, from a VC perspective.
Well, definitely clean that up. It's good. I would say the biggest mistake is not calibrating. Like, you're going almost to a different world. So you have to calibrate, right? And it's possible, but you have to calibrate.
How about we're going to get also some questions from the audience, because I feel like mixing up a little bit. One really, really good question that I just read now. What's the worst speech you've ever received? What was it like? What was it about? Like, that's something that provides a very good story.
Okay, the worst, it's not worst pitch. Honestly, I think founders work so hard that it's just such a tough question,
Yeah, I know.
I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. People are trying their best, they're putting their lives on the line, and it's hard to say the worst pitch, but maybe the craziest idea.
Let's go for that.
Yeah, it's this roller skates that were autonomous. So you would get on the roller skates, and the skates would go by themselves. And
if you could catch them.
Yes, well, the founder insisted that I tried them on, so I was very brave. And
oh, you did?
That was absolutely crazy.
But seems to be like that could have been actually best pitch, because if you're given such a transformational experience, it's good. It's like, wow, this works, and I've had a good time with it. Like, maybe you buy into it earlier, right? I don't know.
Well, that's, I think, what he was hoping. I don't know. I think I value my life a little more than he did.
No, I guess I think it was a very good question, because a few weeks ago I was at a pitching competition. I was being part of the jury, and somebody just came open a briefcase full of models of teeth, but like not the fixed teeth, but the broken teeth, like before, right? When you've got before and after. I was on the before. It was very bizarre, staring at like 50 different models of like really rotten and crooked teeth. It's like, why? Like, I don't know. The first impression was not good, even if you're able to fix it with your product. That was very, very bizarre. It was shocking value. One another thing. How about like the order? Is there any specific order in which the pitch deck has to be presented? Because we've always heard about templates. Here's the YC suggested. Here's Doxen, a company that was recently sold to Dropbox, very good friends of ours at Starpoint in Barcelona. They have compiled like the structure that most founders use, right? What's your take in here? Like, use template versus something bespoke? I don't know. Do you have any hard opinion on that?
I from a founder perspective, I think they help. I'm a Sequoia-backed company, so I use their template. It's helped me. I think there's the main thing is that you need to be concise. You need to be straight to the point. Again, value each other's time. And I think templates just help you organize the information in a way that is easy to digest for everyone, right? And I would just say, for me, the most important thing is to try to do your pitch in 15 minutes. So your side of the presentation, then you can engage in questions, right? But I mean, my most terrible experience, and I don't hear pitches from from founders that often, definitely not as often as Mar, but it's been when you're in a meeting for 40 minutes and you still don't know what they're doing or what are they trying to build, right?
Correct.
So I think just templates, the way I think about templates is just an easy way of digesting information and organizing information in a way that can be concise, understandable. So that's my only take, but I like the genuine flavor. So if you can add a flavor that is more personal, more always go for it. But Mar, you see so many people.
Well, listen, I always give the same advice. Sequoia has a outline. Fill in that outline with text. You don't need a fancy slides. If you don't have the right answers, you're not going to get backed by the best people. I think you can have a very flashy deck and raise from the wrong people, but the good investors are really going to want to have the answers that Sequoia is asking. So just go to their site, fill up those questionnaires, and be true to yourself.
Very quick one. Who should not apply for your event? Like, is there any sector that you're not doing?
So for this first edition, we're not really prioritizing sectors. We want it to be generalist. Maybe in the future we do more verticalized. So we're more agnostic. I think we try to focus on the stage of the company. So we want companies that are ready for a seed round here in Silicon Valley, which is higher than a seed in Spain. So we just said over $2-3 million and probably max 15 because we're targeting these investors. But I know Mar is super eager to invest in companies in Spain, and we wanna be very broad, right? What matters is talent. I don't know, Mar, if you are looking for anything else.
What I'd like to say is, the chamber has this bigger initiative of connecting Spain to the Valley, right? And I think the Venture Summit is one tactic that we have, and I think we're going to have more. So as this chamber, we want to figure out how to, really bring more Spanish founders here. As Pear, wearing my hat of Pear, I am looking for the next large company from Spain. So
I'll send you a few.
If you're interested, come and see me. mar@pear.vc.
Okay,
I was gonna say,
go ahead.
Mar is very humble. She talked about being small, being mighty, but it's paying off because the results talk by themselves. But also they have one of the biggest and strongest reputations, and that's very hard. That is very hard. But I will add, she won't say that, but they're good people on top of all that. So small.
They're VCs, but they're good people. Come on.
Yeah, that exists. That exists. They're at that crossroad.
Yes.
Good people, smart, small, and
Thank
mighty.
you, Pepe. Thank you.
I gotta ask you, we gotta wrap it up by asking you the signature question of Startup Grind in Barcelona. Pepe, you didn't get it when you spoke in our conference because I didn't interview you, it was somebody else, but otherwise you would have gotten it. Everybody gets this question when they are in our stage at Startup Grind Barcelona, however virtual that stage is, like right now. But what is your useless superpower? Don't tell me a useful superpower. Like everybody gets a useless superpower. Something you do exceptionally well, but it's worthless. It's like, what do I do these for? How can I be so talented at something that's stupid?
Oh.
The hardest question ever, I know.
It is a hard question.
Who wants to go first?
I don't know. This is a test for whether we pass the bar.
I've got like 17 or 25 of them, so I mean I can give you examples if you want, if that helps you.
What is my superpower?
Useless. It's got to be useless. Like, we've got
the
best answers. We had the best answers over the years. So I mean,
I have a good impersonation of Eros Ramazzotti. I'm not gonna do it right now, but that's
put your money where your mouth is.
I'm not. I don't think people are here for that,
but in the karaoke or.
I don't even use it on a karaoke. I'm more of an Elton John in a karaoke, but Eros Ramazzotti has always been there.
That's awesome.
All right.
Well, I have to say, I'm not a cook. I've never cooked in my life. So I'm an expert at at knowing the best foods that you can eat out of boxes or microwave. So I'm really good at that. And,
That's kind of like a perfect blend of useless and useful.
Spain.
What's that? Sorry.
That's why I appreciate Spain.
All
No,
right.
it's useless. You really can't socialize. Come and have my, microwavable mac and cheese.
Yeah, but at least you can appreciate. It seems like you can move around in different. Okay, this is the best one. This is but yeah, we'll take it. Regarding karaoke, actually, Pepe, I've got one for you then, because one of my useless superpowers is that I don't know the lyrics to the songs I like, but I know the lyrics to songs I don't like. So I go to karaoke and I'm forced to sing like whatever Miley Cyrus or Britney Spears because I know the lyrics to that, but I don't know the lyrics to my favorite songs from Metallica. Like.
I see.
That's a pretty useless superpower. Anyhow, one last minute for you two to say what's going on. Like, what else should we know regarding the event, regarding Pear, regarding your next chapter, Pepe? The red carpet is yours.
Yeah, no, we've talked about the mission of the chamber. We want to stay connected with entrepreneurs in Spain, regardless of the state they're in right now. The summit may or may not be the right channel, but if you have questions, if you have interest in Silicon Valley, if you're thinking about coming here, just let us know, right? If we don't help each other between entrepreneurs, who's going to help us? So the chamber is here to help out.
That's a good point. All right, I think unless Mar has got
any
parting words.
Thank you, Àlex. Great to see you.
We can wrap it up here. See you in the next event. Thank you for being part of the 7th anniversary of Startup Barcelona, and definitely see you at the California Spain Chamber of Commerce event in June. So we'll send more instructions via email to everybody, and we're out. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Àlex. Thanks, everyone. Bye.